Hey guys, what I want to do here, as well as in the future occasionally, in relation to Dragon Age Inquisition, is upload videos discussing certain topics related to the game as well as the Dragon Age world slash universe. Now, one topic I find particularly interesting, and I would encourage you to participate in discussion in the comment section once you've fully watched this video, is the topic of racial preference and dwarves. Now, first off, I don't have any inherent preferences towards race, particularly in fantasy games. Everything I do, every decision I make with regards to the character of the race is pretty premeditated. So, for those of you following the LP, there's a reason why I chose to play an elf and a female to boot, as well as a mage. I thought, for one, given the Dalish background of sort of living outside of the city, not exposed to conventional views on magic, that would be interesting. So you already have that sort of outcast flavor. Being an elf, of course, you're already even more of an outcast, and then add mage to that, and given the fact that mages are intimately tied to the troubles occurring in the game, presumably the rift, the breach, as well as the ongoing troubles between the mages and the Templars, which really hit the fan. The shit hit the fan during Dragon Age 2 and culminated there and been ongoing since. That would provide a natural conflict. And why I tend to do 50-50 male-female, but I'm not going to lie to you. I have my character, or I have a romantic interest in Solus, so to speak. I just think he's a really interesting guy. We'll see how that plays out, and that's one reason why I chose a female. But all those, that's all premeditated. Also, my Inquisitor is sort of feels comfortable with the Dalish identity, but not completely. And there's definitely an aspect to Corvina that wants to explore the rest of the world, and so the idea of joining the Inquisition is not totally distasteful to her, even though of course she doesn't really trust non-elves too much, and particularly non-mages all that much. But so everything, as I said, everything was premeditated going into making that character. I thought about it for probably a couple of weeks. The background, even the look. I wanted to give her an exotic look, hence the very red look. Even the eyes are reddish toned, and I think it looks quite cool. So everything's premeditated, but it wasn't because I just think, well, elves are cool to play. It was because in this particular setting for this Let's Play, given the events in this fantasy world, in this pocket universe, I had to contemplate what would make an interesting combination to play as a Let's Play, racially, class-wise, and even gender-wise. And then based on all of those things, I made my decision. But it wasn't an inherent preference for, I just like elves. Now, the picture you're seeing here is my private playthrough of my dwarf, Leif. He is a two-handed warrior. Originally I was planning to do this simultaneously, but uploading both at the same time is just going to be too strenuous, and I think it's better to concentrate on one as a Let's Play. That doesn't, of course, exclude the possibility of another Dragon Age Let's Play sometime in the future if this one is successful. But anyway, that's my dwarf Leif. And I want to talk about general racial preferences, of course. And I actually posted a kind of, not really a survey, but an opinion poll on Bioware in reference to this. Well, not really an official poll, but just surveying people's opinions. Now, it seems to me a recurrent theme in fantasy games is constant popularity of humans. That's obvious. Humans are just sort of universally the most popular. Elves are thought of kind of mystical, cool, lithe, something mysterious about them almost. Their looks are sort of human, but not quite. So it gives them that sort of intriguing look. And once again, that's not why I chose an elf, even though I think certainly I like my Inquisitor. I think she's attractive and she looks interesting. But those aren't the reasons. And of course, in the Dragon Age Inquisition in Thedas, playing a Qunari is the first time you can ever do that. So everyone's going to lens Qunari. And of course, being a Qunari, you're an outlier. You're really on the outskirts of everything. And humans are just kind of familiar. They also have good stat bonuses. You get the extra attribute point and so on. And then the question arises, where quo vadis, Mr. Dwarf? What do we do with the dwarves? I mean, dwarves are a staple of fantasy, and they have been since Tolkien, essentially. Even before that, if you've read any of the Scandinavian Old Norse sagas and what have you, they aren't called dwarves per se, but there are beings in those sagas that most certainly resemble dwarves and almost certainly are dwarves. But if you just look at the trends, and I haven't done official polling here, it's pretty clear that dwarves are the least popular race in general in fantasy, and here I'm specifically talking about the Dragon Age universe. They were the least popular in Origins, and this has continued in Dragon Age Inquisition. And I think there are a couple of reasons for this. So I'm going to posit some ideas. And once again, I'm doing this to open up discussion because I think this is an interesting topic for anyone who's a fantasy aficionado who wants to get into more depth into why people are making decisions and how this all plays out in the world. Like I said, my dwarf, like I said, it's a private playthrough, but my dwarf is, based on the background, of course, a member of the Carta, but always had reservations about being a member of the Carta, and he's a rather good-hearted chap and much more inclined to be helpful and kind than, say, the distrustful and in some ways even cruel Corvina occasionally. But so personality opposite, of course, but also dwarf has something very common to it, right? They're not. I mean, I'll get in a second why I think people don't play dwarves, but they're not exotic. They don't have that lithe look. They don't have that mystical look of elves. They don't have the practicality and the influence of humans per se, and they're not outliers like Kunari. They're surface dwarves and dwarves in the deep roads and what have you, but they're nothing special, right? Now, the reason why I believe, and this is just a theory, why dwarves are so unpopular in general, but specifically in Dragon Age, are the following reasons. One, they're short. They're short and stocky. I think it's a cool look. It's interesting, and it definitely suits the kind of character I had in mind for my dwarf two-handed warrior Leif. But let's face it, that is shortness and heroism aren't exactly bosom buddies. What I mean to say here is I believe that there's almost a kind of psychological bleed over effect from the real world. Now, in the real world, below average height people are actually disadvantaged. There have been numerous studies documenting that they get paid less on average, anywhere from between 15 and 20% less on average. They're looked at as less competent, even if they are very competent, and even if a person's tall but doesn't have competence or the necessary abilities, oftentimes competence will be assigned to that person or perceived in that person simply because he or she is tall. So there's definitely a perception, I think, going on here, a bleed-over effect, where no pun intended here, you can't really look up to a dwarf hero, and yes, I said the pun is intended there. Short, stocky. I don't think that's the idea people have of a hero, and I think it ultimately stems from our own human psychological biases in the real world. I have a good ability of setting those aside for the purposes of role-playing, and so I don't really take things like that into consideration. But I think most people look at it that way, and based on some of the replies I saw on the Bioware forums, that's my impression too. There are also some practical concerns, such as romances, that the short, stocky dwarf doesn't really fit with the others too well, and it just looks really strange. I suppose that's true, but that's not a huge concern of mine either way. And then, of course, the fact that dwarves, at least in Dragon Age, cannot play mage as a class. But that is a well-founded story or historical background within the context of Dragon Age. Dwarves for eons have been exposed to delirium, which has basically made them unable to dream and, of course, magic resistant. And being magic resistant, they can't be mages. It follows logically from that. And so, of course, you have some class limitation there, understandably. But there's a very good lore explanation for that. And I wouldn't like to see dwarves suddenly playing mages just because people wanted more flexible. That said, there definitely is a bias towards dwarves, as far as I can observe, or with respects to Dragon Age Inquisition. Few people play them, and I think it's for the reasons that I cited. I think a lot of people think more about what is appealing rather than what might be an interesting character to play. Like I said, as far as Corvina is concerned, I find her appealing, yes, but that's not the primary reason why I'm playing a Dalish elf mage. It's because I think that's just an interesting combination given all the conflicts with mages, the chantry, which has in the past, the exalted marches, as you know, a lot of elves perished during the exalted marches many centuries ago. And so things of that nature. It's just an interesting historical slash current conflict going on there. And then that's the reason I chose her for the LP. And Leif I chose just because because he's common, because he's just a regular kind of guy who's thrown into the situation, and he's really doing his best to make the situation right. I mean, he didn't ask for it, but rather than resenting it, he's doing the best with his abilities. He's making the best of his abilities, and that's all he can do. I never thought, well, he's short, or it's more about the character depth for me and what's motivating them rather than this race is appealing to me or not. If I were ever to play Kunari, which I have not, I would have to have a similar reason. I would have to think up a background and think what is motivating my Kunari character to proceed and to basically fulfill the role of Inquisitor, and the same with a human. But there wouldn't be any sort of racial preference other than how does that mesh with being a particular race in this particular role. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about this. I've expounded on my ideas and theories. Please, to participate in the discussion, leave comments and let me know what you think. And if you're playing Dragon Age Inquisition or planning on it, let me know what race and gender you're going to play, and let me know your reasons for playing them. That's also good for gathering data. Your views and likes are appreciated as always, and I will see you guys very soon. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care, and may the gods be with you, not the maker.